Hello and welcome back to another video. If you're new to this channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But without further ado, let's get into it. Imagine this, it's 2016, a brand new hero shooter is about to drop from the same studio that brought us Borderlands. The trailers are flashy and the characters are wild and hype is everywhere. People are all calling it the next big multiplayer gaming mix between Overwatch and MOBA magic. But within a few months, it was gone from the spotlight, and a few years later, completely dead, servers shut down and no way to play it. Poof. Completely vanished. So what happened? How did a game with this much potential from respected studios like 2K and Gearbox crash and burn so fast? Today we're looking back at Battleborn, the tragic tale of 2K's hero shooter. When Battleborn launched in May 2016, it wasn't just another shooter. It was Gearbox Software's biggest bet. These were the people behind Borderlands, one of the most beloved shooters ever. So expectations were sky high for these developers for this installment. The idea was simple but bold. Combine the fast-paced FPS action Gearbox was known for with the strategy and team-based elements of MOBAs like League of Legends. Each character, or Battleborn they're called in this game, had unique abilities, personalities and roles similar to games like Overwatch, which were popular at the time. And with over 20 heroes at launch, it felt like massive amounts of content and value. But there was a storm brewing on the horizon, and it had a familiar name: Overwatch. Blizzard's hero shooter launched just a few weeks later, and it dominated the conversation. Suddenly, Battleborn's identity, its whole personality even, was overshadowed by a game that was cleaner, simpler, and way more easier for newcomers to jump into. Still, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we dive into what went wrong with this game, let's talk about how Battleborn came to be, the dream behind it, the ideas that fueled its creation, and why so many people at Gearbox thought they were building the next big thing in multiplayer gaming. To really understand Battleborn, we've got to rewind the clock back to the early 2010s. Gearbox Software just come off a massive hit with Borderlands 2. It was everywhere, hilarious writing, addictive loot, chaotic co-op gameplay. It was the kind of success that puts a studio on the map as a creative powerhouse in the industry. But after Borderlands, Gearbox didn't want to make just another sequel. They wanted to innovate, to do something new, something much bigger. Around this time, the gaming landscape was shifting fast. MOBAs like League of Legends and Dota 2 were dominating the PC space. On the console side, shooters like Call of Duty and Destiny were new expectations for multiplayer experiences. Gearbox looked at this mix and thought, what if we combine it all? A hero-based shooter with deep progression, strategic team play, and bold personalities, like a Saturday morning cartoon that explodes into an FPS. That was the spark that became Battleborn. Development started around 2012 or 2013 under 2K Games, with Randy Pitchford leading the charge. The goal was to create something original, a brand new IP that could stand out next to other giants in the industry. The art style was stylized, almost comic book-like, taking cues from Borderlands, but turning the saturation up to 11. The world of Battleborn was set in a universe on the brink of collapse, with the last star in existence being fought over by rival factions. That premise alone, epic, apocalyptic, it sounded so enticing for players who were fans of Borderlands and Gearbox and 2K's previous work. And the characters, the so-called Battleborn, were as diverse as they were chaotic. You had gun-wielding space marines, sword-swinging samurais, plant creatures, robots, physics, and a penguin piloting a mech suit. So yeah, Gearbox was going all in on personality for this one. Internally, the team was ambitious. They wanted a story campaign and a deep multiplayer mode with deep progression. They wanted competitive play and co-op missions. Basically, they tried to please both of the Borderlands fans and the MOBA crowd at the same time, and it failed, but also succeeded in some aspects. It was a bold move, but it came at a cost for the developers. Development was stretched long, and the design kept evolving as the market shifted. Every few months, new games were raising the bar for online shooters. Titanfall, Destiny, Overwatch, Paladins, all released at the same time, and Battleborn had to keep finding its own identity. By the time 2016 rolled around, Battleborn was ready. It looked unique, It sounded unique, and Gearbox was confident it could carve its place in a rapidly changing market. What no one realized yet though was that the same creative ambition that made Battleborn special was also the thing that would eventually lead to its downfall. Before Battleborn even launched, Gearbox pushed hard to build the hype, and honestly, for a while it worked. The pre-release period was packed with trailers, character spotlights, and developer breakdowns that showed off how weird and diverse the cast really was. Gamers were curious, the art direction stood out instantly, and it was one of the main things that drew me to the game specifically. Loud colors, chunky design animations that felt ripped straight out of a comic book or a fever dream. And Gearbox didn't just market a game, they tried to market a world. You had a faction lore videos, behind the scenes dev diaries, and yes, even a trading card game. If you weren't around back then, these weren't just cheap promo items. They were beautifully illustrated, officially printed cards with stats, lore, and character art they had handed out at conventions, pre-release events, and game stores when you could buy the game. I personally got mine when I went into a local game store in my town, and I still held on to them for so long even after the game was discontinued. A lot of people probably tossed them aside, but some fans like myself held on to them. Some even collected full sets long after the game had shut down. Those cards have basically become relics of a game that came and went in a blink of an eye. A tiny piece of gaming history from a project that had so much heart behind it. Then, May 3rd, 2016, Battleborn officially launched. And let's be real, the first impression was really strong. Right out of the gate, the game threw players into big, chaotic battles where abilities were flying everywhere. Shields, swords, rockets, giant mushrooms with healing powers. It was pure colourful madness. The gameplay was a hybrid of FPS combat, MOBA-style leveling, hero abilities and ultimates, and co-op missions and player versus player modes. Gearbox tried to give something to everyone. PvP, RPG fans got progression and unlocks, and MOBA fans got lanes, minions, and a leveling system that was deep and progressive. It was ambitious, and unlike anything else Gearbox had released at the time. But that ambition was a double-edged sword, because while the people who got Battleborn loved it, a lot of players found it overwhelming and way too complex. The tutorial was long, the matches were long, the UI was... And for every player who thought this is a complex and unique, there was another one saying this feels messy and confusing. Still, the early reception wasn't a disaster. Reviewers praised the variety, the humor, and the creativity. The cast was memorable, the world building was interesting, and longtime Gearbox fans found a ton to appreciate in this game. For a brief moment, it felt like Battleborn could build a strong community and grow over time and carve out its own identity. But that moment didn't last, because just a few weeks later, the gaming landscape was about to shift in a way no one could have predicted. And that shift had a name: Overwatch, and it hit the industry like a bomb. Just weeks before Battleborn launched, Blizzard dropped Overwatch, and in an instant the entire hero shooter landscape changed. Overwatch wasn't just another game, it was polished, simple, stylish, and backed by one of the most powerful marketing machines in the gaming industry. Blizzard made sure everyone knew about it: esports fans, casual players, even people who hadn't touched a shooter in years. And here's the thing, Overwatch wasn't better than Battleborn, no, it was just easier to understand. Battleborn had multiple modes, different progression layers, minions, lanes, gears, loadouts, and helix skill trees, whilst Overwatch had pick a hero, shoot the enemies, and push the objective. That's it. Players could watch a single trailer and get it. Battleborn, on the other hand, required a breakdown video, a diagram, maybe a seminar to understand. Now that might be a little over exaggeration, but you understand what I'm saying here. And in a world where attention spans are shrinking, complexity became the enemy. Battleborn felt like homework, whereas Overwatch just felt like a recess. Switching to the marketing, Gearbox tried to respond. They pushed out ads, gameplay showcases, humor-filled trailers, but the timing was brutal. Where Blizzard marketed Overwatch as a fun pick-up-and-play shooter, 2K marketed Battleborn like an esports-ready, strategy-heavy hybrid. A lot of people didn't even realize the two games were different genres. Some thought one ripped off the other, Some thought Battleborn was a mode in Overwatch, and if your entire marketing identity is getting confused with your biggest competitor, you're already in trouble. And this is something 2K and Gearbox struggled with throughout the whole of Battleborn's lifespan. Defeating a game as big and as popular as Overwatch was just impossible at the time, as they dominated the hero shooter genre. Despite Battleborn's differences, it wasn't enough to stand out and draw in new players, and this led to the player count crisis. The numbers, by the end of the first month, player counts for Battleborn were dropping fast. Overwatch was dominating streaming platforms like Twitch, YouTube, it was everywhere, and Battleborn simply wasn't. And once your multiplayer base starts shrinking, it's a death spiral. Longer queues mean fewer players mean longer queues, and you can see the cycle. Eventually, people just don't come back. And this was even stranger to see when looking at the early reviews. They gave Battleborn a fighting chance, but as Overwatch dominated the conversation, comparison videos flooded the internet. Titles like Overwatch vs Battleborn, which should you buy? Why Overwatch is better than Battleborn? Battleborn is already dead. Even if you liked the game, even if you supported the game, the narrative was slipping away. 2K responded with different updates and patches, even making the game free to play in the end, but this was all too late. Gearbox wasn't asleep at the wheel, they fought. The team pushed constant updates, balance patches, new characters and modes. A lot of them were genuinely great. There was a passion behind these changes, even as players' numbers dwindled. And then in 2017, the game moved to a free trial, basically a soft free-to-play model. It helped a little, but not enough. By this point, Overwatch wasn't Battleborn's only problem. Games like Paladins, Fortnite, Rainbow Six were all gaining attention in the streaming genre. The hero shooter genre was evolving fast and way quicker than Gearbox or 2K could adapt to. And yet, Battleborn still had one of the most loyal small communities out there, me myself included. Forums stayed active, Discords held events, players made guides and fan art long after the world moved on. This community wasn't huge, but it was fiercely dedicated. People collected merch, they kept their promo items, some like me even held on to their trading cards long after the servers went dark. Reminders of a game that deserved better. Even when the world forgot Battleborn, its fans didn't. And this led to a very quiet end for the game. In September 2017, Gearbox announced they would stop active development. Battleborn wouldn't get new content, it would enter maintenance mode for many players. This felt like the final nail in the coffin for the game, only a year after release. And then, in early 2020 came the news no one wanted to hear. Battleborn servers would be permanently shut down. No offline mode, no private lobbies, no way to preserve or play the game. When the servers went off, the entire game vanished. On January 31st, 2021, Battleborn officially died. A game with so much personality, so much creativity, so much ambition, gone completely. Not because it was bad, not because it didn't have fans, but because it launched at the wrong time, in the shadow of a giant. And that's the tragedy, and one of the main contributing factors that led this game to its demise. For all the chaos happening on the multiplayer side of Battleborn, something a lot of players forget or never even experienced was the campaign. And honestly, this is where Battleborn's heart really beat the strongest, because beneath the loud humour, the explosions and the Saturday morning cartoon energy, Battleborn had a surprisingly dark and epic sci-fi story, especially when compared to its main competitor Overwatch, which didn't even really have a main campaign at the time. The worlds of Battleborn takes place at the very end of time. Every star in the universe has been destroyed, consumed by an unstoppable cosmic force known as the Virelsi. Only one star remains, Solus, the final light in a dying universe, and every remaining species once spread across billions of systems is now crowded into the last solar system, fighting for survival. This setting is one of the most ambitious parts of Battleborn. It's tragic, massive and unbelievably high stakes. Every mission in the campaign is literally a fight to keep the last flicker of existence alive, and this adrenaline is what kept me pushing through the story and so intrigued to see where it would end. To defend the last star, 5 factions who absolutely hate each other come together to form something like an emergency all-star superhero team, and that team is called the Battleborn. Think like the Avengers Endgame. And these 5 factions were the Peacekeepers, military defenders led by Commander Galt, the Eldred, nature guardians and mystics who reject artificial control, the generic empire, immortal, power-hungry warriors built around domination, the LLC, wealthy corporate robots who run everything like a business, and last but not least, the rogues, anarchists, smugglers and pirates who don't follow anyone's rules. This cast wasn't just colourful, it was chaotic good, chaotic evil, and everything in between. Each mission brought together characters who would normally be enemies, forced to work side by side to survive, creating an amazing character dynamic where the different Battleborn bounce off each other amazingly within the story, and it became so compelling. The campaign unfolds mission by mission, almost like an episodic TV series, each with a different tone, different enemies and different objectives, but they all revolve around one thing: stopping the Virelsi invasion. The Virelsi aren't just aliens, they're cosmic darkness, a force from outside the universe bent on extinguishing all light. They consume stars, corrupt worlds, and overwhelm entire civilizations without a word, and at the center of it all, a traitor. Rendane, the towering commander of the generic military. Rendane made a deal with the Virelsi, helped them destroy the universe, and in return, his empire would survive in whatever comes after. He's one of the most underrated villains in hero shooter history. Charismatic, intimidating, and convinced he's making the logical choice for survival. Every mission slowly reveals more of his betrayal, more of his manipulation, and more of the damage he's done. Battleborn's story missions had a surprising amount of variety. You weren't just running through corridors, you were defending bases, escorting unstable energy cores, fighting massive bosses, exploring frozen wastelands, deserts and ruins. Some standout missions from the campaign that I really enjoyed are as follows: the Algorithm, fighting through a malfunctioning robot facility run by the unhinged AI ISIC. The Saboteur, one of the toughest missions in the game I found, where you must defend a power relay against relentless waves of Virelsi. Another standout was the Void's Edge, where you battle corruption as the Virelsi invade a cold, crumbling planet. The Experiment, where you discover some of the darkest Virelsi secrets in a twisted science facility. And the Helo Page, the grand finale where infiltrating Rendane's fortress and facing him in an explosive climax. These missions weren't perfect, they could be a bit repetitive, as some of the critics said, and I would agree here. Some were brutally unbalanced as well, but they were fun, creative, and full of personality, and I loved chucking on 2 controllers and playing split screen with family and friends. Looking closer at the finale, the campaign ends in an all-out assault on Rendane's stronghold, a mission called the Helo Page. This is where everything comes together: explosions, betrayals, emotional reveals, faction leaders teaming up, and a final battle for the fate of existence. If this doesn't excite you, I don't know what will. And when you beat Rendane, the universe is saved, but only for now. The Virelsi are still out there, Solus is still the last star, and the Battleborn know their victory is temporary. It's a hopeful ending, but not a clear one, and a reminder that they won a battle, but not the war. And I could see if this game was a bit more successful, Gearbox making a sequel, and I would have loved to have seen what that had looked like. But unfortunately, with the way it performed, I guess we'll never find out how the story really ends. And here's what makes all of this even more tragic. This entire world, with its lore, its characters, villains, its cosmic stakes, is now unplayable and gone forever. Wiped away when the servers were shut down. The story mode wasn't just a bonus feature, it was the soul of Battleborn, and it showed what Gearbox was really trying to do and create. A universe big enough to stand next to Borderlands, next to Overwatch, a universe that could have turned into comics, spin-offs, sequels, card games, even an animated series, but now it survives only in uploads, memories, and the collectors who still keep the pieces of the game alive. When you look back at Battleborn, it's easy to focus on the memes, the comparisons, the Overwatch killer debates, the jokes people made when the player count dropped. But underneath all of that noise, underneath all the headlines and the marketing misfires, Battleborn was a game full of heart and ambition, full of creative risk that few studios at the time were willing to take. Every part of Battleborn radiated personality. The art style was loud, unapologetically wild. The characters were some of the strangest, funniest and memorable in the shooter genre genre. It had lore, deep lore, with a universe that felt bigger than the game itself, and most importantly, it had charm. Whether you loved the campaign's goofy banter, or the adrenaline rush of the tight player versus player matches, or just the chaos of mixing 25 wildly different heroes together, Battleborn made you feel something, or at least it made me feel something. When the hero shooter craze hit in 2016, it was a perfect storm. Overwatch exploded, games like Paladins grew, studios everywhere tried to chase the trend. Battleborn didn't win the race, but it started it. It was one of the first hero shooters to blend genres like FPS, MOBA, and RPG elements, before most studios even realised that formula was even the future. In a way, Battleborn walked so other games could run. Games like Valorant, Apex Legends, Siege, and Overwatch 2 all took ideas that Battleborn experimented with, unique abilities, hero roles, niche mechanics, and refined them into modern multiplayer landscape we see today. And there was a lot of successes that people forgot. Despite what people say, Battleborn did succeed in meaningful ways. Its campaign was inventive and fun, despite it being a little bit repetitive. Its characters were unlike anything else at the time, diverse and wide, with different abilities. Its writing had the signature Gearbox charm that we see in its games like Borderlands. Its community, though small, was dedicated, passionate, and genuinely wholesome. And its post-launch support showed how the devs fought for it. They didn't just let the game die as soon as they saw numbers drop or money not coming in. Battleborn may not have won the popularity contest, but it still left a footprint that many of us remember to this day. Yes, Battleborn struggled. It launched too close to a titan. It tried to do too much. It struggled with clarity, marketing, and identity. But in hindsight, those failures are part of what makes its legacy compelling. Battleborn wasn't just a game that died, it was a game that fought, a game that kept pushing updates long after the numbers dropped, a game whose dev team didn't abandon ship. They rode it all the way to the end. There's something honourable about that. So let's talk about Gearbox and 2K for a moment. It's easy to dunk on a studio when a game fails, but building something new, something original, in a market that often punishes new ideas, takes guts. Gearbox could have made Borderlands 3. They could have played it safe. They could have played it predictable, but instead they created an entirely new universe, a new set of mechanics, a new style, a new IP in one of the most competitive eras in multiplayer gaming. Did they make mistakes? Of course, but they also took risks that other studios wouldn't dare to do. And for that, genuinely, they deserve respect, and they have my respect. 2K supported the project, funded its ambition, and stuck with it when it was long past its expiry date. Even when the world moved on, they kept the servers alive for years, for the fans who still cared. That commitment matters. It showed that Battleborn was more than a quick cash grab. It was a passion project from the developers, and I give them all my respect in this video. Today, Battleborn lives on only in memories, old footage, concept art, and fan collections like you've seen all throughout this video. The servers may be gone, but what the game represented isn't. It represented creativity. It represented risk-taking. It represented a studio trying to do something different. In a time where safe was the profitable option, Battleborn wasn't perfect, but it was bold, weird, ambitious, and even sometimes that's enough to make a game worth remembering. So here's to Battleborn. The tragic tale of a hero shooter that launched at the wrong time, made the wrong moves, and faced competition no one could have predicted, but still managed to leave behind one of the most unique universes in modern gaming. If you were there during the launch, if you played the story with friends like I did, if you collected the cards, if you stuck around during the final months, then you were part of something special, even if the world didn't see it at the time. So thanks for joining me on this retrospective journey back into the world of Battleborn. If you enjoyed this deep dive, let me know in the comments, or share your own memories of playing the game. I'd love to hear them and read them. And if you want more videos like this on forgotten games, abandoned projects, success stories, or total disasters, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and check out some of the other videos I have on my channel. This was Battleborn. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.